Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
In a recent interview published on January 6, 2025, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump emphasized the critical need to revitalize America's naval shipbuilding industry, highlighting the Constellation-class frigates as both a success and a missed opportunity. Trump's remarks shed light on the challenges that have slowed the production of these advanced warships and the broader issues facing the shipbuilding sector. The Constellation-class frigates were developed under Trump's administration to fill critical gaps in the U.S. Navy's fleet. These warships, designed for anti-submarine warfare, escort missions, and maritime security, offer a versatile and cost-effective solution alongside the Navy's larger destroyers. Built by Fincantieri Marinette Marine in Wisconsin, the program was intended to showcase the capabilities of American shipyards and strengthen the domestic defense industry. However, Trump expressed frustration over changes to the ship's design after his administration. Alterations, such as the widening of the hull, were made after the program's inception, which he argues negatively impacted the frigate's speed and efficiency. This situation highlights broader concerns about inefficiencies in the defense procurement process, where late-stage design changes disrupt production schedules, delay timelines, and drive up costs. Trump pointed to the need for discipline in sticking to the original plans for such critical defense programs. He compared the current pace of shipbuilding to the rapid production capabilities during World War II, when shipyards like Bath Iron Works in Maine produced destroyers every 17 days. In contrast, today's shipyards are only averaging about 1.5 ships per year, which Trump views as a stark contrast and unacceptable in a world of growing global threats. Another issue Trump raised was the lack of adequate infrastructure to support shipbuilding efforts. He criticized the closure of key shipyard facilities under the current administration, which he claims has hindered the Navy's readiness. Trump called for increased investment in shipyard infrastructure, including new docks and expanded production lines, to ensure the U.S. can maintain a competitive edge in naval power. Trump also suggested that outsourcing shipbuilding contracts to foreign manufacturers could be a temporary solution to fill the gap while U.S. shipyards ramp up production capacity. This approach would allow the Navy to continue receiving the ships it needs while the domestic shipbuilding industry rebuilds its capabilities. As the U.S. Navy aims for a 330-ship fleet, the need for programs like the Constellation-class frigates has become even more urgent, especially with rival powers such as China rapidly expanding their maritime capabilities. The timely delivery of these warships is critical to maintaining the Navy's operational readiness and ensuring national security in a rapidly changing geopolitical landscape. In conclusion, Trump's remarks underscore the need for a renewed focus on America's naval shipbuilding industry. By addressing inefficiencies, investing in infrastructure, and sticking to original designs, the U.S. can rebuild its shipbuilding capabilities and ensure that the Navy remains strong and capable of meeting the challenges of the future. The Constellation-class frigates are a key part of that.
President-elect Trump's focus on U.S. Navy shipbuilding and other shipbuilding is the truth. And that's why we're talking about it on Truth Thursday. The Rob Maness Show is live on Worldview Tube, X-Space's simulcast, and our Truth Social Plus live stream. So China has the largest Navy in the world, folks. You heard me right. And it continues ramping up its military with weapons capable of reaching the United States and strategically important assets abroad all around the world. The incoming Trump administration has to put a priority on strengthening our military, particularly our Navy and merchant marine shipbuilding, to deter China. And President Trump's recent comments indicate that they will, because he and his appointees understand the issue. But that's only the beginning, however. We must eventually expand our shipyard capabilities and in the interim find innovative ways to rapidly expand our shipbuilding capacity outside of our shores. Reshoring requires finding the funding too and building more infrastructure at existing yards plus creating new shipyard manufacturers while increasing our workforce and securing vital material supply chains. And today we're speaking with the president of Supply Chain Management Incorporated One, a contractor in the engineering and workforce development space. SCM1 President Naveen Anamolo is a Harvard Business School executive alumni, engineer, and an entrepreneur. He runs a federal government contracting business that's focused on engineering services with the United States Navy and the Department of Defense. Naveen was born in the United States and is of Indian descent. His dad was the first Indian American recognized in the U.S. Congress for Homeland Security. Naveen believes in the American dream, like I do, and also believes there's tremendous waste in our system and government, and is committed to fighting to keep the American dream alive for all Americans first. All Americans first. And that's what's important here. Naveen, welcome to the Rob Maness Show, sir.
Thank you, Colonel. And I just want to say thank you for your service to our country. Because of you, we're safe.
Well, thank you. Thank you for yours. As a matter of fact, why don't you tell the audience before we dive into the detail about how you and I are going to fix shipbuilding in the United States, about your background and what led you to make a decision to start this company, because you founded this company, Supply Chain Management Inc.
Correct. So a little bit about my background. From Long Island, New York. My father was an immigrant from India, and actually my father is the inspiration for me getting into this. As an immigrant, he came here, got his U.S. citizenship, ended up working in the defense sector, and he opened a federal government contracting business. He wasn't so big in the Navy initially. He was more involved in Homeland Security. He was the first Indian American to be recognized in U.S. Congress for Homeland Security. And I saw that he was serving. And, I tell this story to everyone. When I was 18 years old, I wanted to serve. And so I went to, the local recruiter. Actually, I went to a friend of mine, and I said, I want to serve. I want to go in the Navy. He showed me a boot camp of Navy SEALs. And I was like, oh, shit, I'm going to get my butt kicked. So I said, okay, you know what? Forget about it. So then I went to, a friend of mine who happened to be in the Army. He showed me Army. For some reason, they showed me the hardest one. So, he shows me, Army boot camp. And I'm like, all right, I don't know. So I'm a little bit of a nerd. I said, okay, let me go to Air Force. And long story short, I went in, recruiter, everything was good. Walked out. I had asthma, so I took a pump from my asthma inhaler and got ripped up the paperwork. He was like, you can't go. So, but ever since then, I said, I can serve this country. And, so it's been my dream to do that. And so I saw my father doing it. I said, let me open a business. Let me do this. And I started seeing some of the challenges in our DOD, especially. And, I started seeing a lot of craziness with the military industrial complex and things like that. And I said, you know what, I want to get in here, change this, show them how to do it right, and provide good value. And so I started my company doing that.
So your company is not just focused on engineering. I think I mentioned some workforce development. You do some work in that area too, but there's other spaces that you operate in. What is its focus in a broad way strategically as a federal contractor beyond the Navy? Before we dive into the ship stuff, I want folks to know about it a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm focused on adding value. I mean, I have private sector clients as well. We're providing good resources, U.S. citizens and green card holders only, focused on U.S. citizens mainly, helping those people to get placed in the right position. But I'm not a staffing company. I actually provide them mentorship, guidance, training. Most of my staff, I would say 95% of my staff, are retired veterans, because veterans are the people that are kicked to the curb, even though they're the ones that serve us and do everything. They're kicked to the curb. And so I always say, hey, I kind of take veterans first and say I'd rather have the veteran, on my staff. And I'm sorry, to other people who are citizens, but hey, you're a veteran, you served, I need you on my team because you understand what it's like to handle rejection and handle problems, and you can easily solve problems, So in most cases, that works out. So I always take veterans, but that's my focus is, providing solutions. And in the Navy space, I do ship maintenance, HM&E support, submarine design, submarine build. I support some contracts of submarine build, ship, like I said, ship assessments, administrative, logistics support, all across the world. And, I'm able to see some of the craziness that happens in the government contracting world on a regular basis.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I want to make sure I give you a chance to delve into a little bit, because you're the defense industry is divided into the bigs and the smalls. There really aren't any mediums at this point, and you guys are a small. So from your perspective, one of the things we have to do in the ship manufacturing space for the Navy and Merchant Marines really is figure out how do we expand our capabilities for our existing shipyards, and then incentivize capital to come in and help create new ship manufacturing companies, because we need to not only expand our capabilities in existing shipyards, we have to have new ones. You don't build 17 destroyers a day like Bath Iron Works was doing unless you have a huge supply chain that's very reliable, that's secure, unless you have a workforce that's available and trained and has enough experience to be able to bring young folks in and get them through apprenticeships and become journeymen and those kind of things. So we know there are problems because the United States can't build more than 1.5 ships a year on the Navy side, and on the Merchant Marine side, which is part of the Navy, it's about 5, which is incredibly small number when you look at China. And we'll see some numbers thrown around about the Chinese Navy during the clips for the show. So from your small company perspective and your experience working with the Navy, and you said you're doing submarine design, so that's shipbuilding, really. Yep. I know they're called boats, guys, gals in the Navy. I understand that, but that is part of this manufacturing process that we have to rebuild and reshore eventually. So from your perspective, what are the things that could be done to change things, to bring in more innovation and create more companies like yours, or give your companies like yours more maneuvering room to be able to have a more positive impact on the procurement process and the manufacturing process for the U.S. Navy?
Yeah, and you bring up some great points. I mean, look, they always say when you're talking about presidential administrations, they always say people is policy. Well, or policy is based on the people you bring in. Well, it's the same thing here with the workforce. You highlighted workforce, and I know everyone talks about the supply chain. Look, we can solve the supply chain. It's literally just buying something and bringing it in. But if you don't have the right people to do the work, you're not going to be able to succeed. So what I always tell people is, and this is my focus, I tell customers of mine, I've gone to Groton, Connecticut, I've gone to Kings Bay, Georgia, and other places, and I'm telling them, and these are submarine bases for those who don't know, I've gone to these places, I've spoken with commanders, I've spoken with others, and I say, look, you need the right personnel. The problem is when you bring the bigs in, like Lockheed's and all these guys, and I'm not singling out Lockheed, but you bring in these big companies, what happens is there's tons of waste. And so while they get people at high salaries, what happens is they have trouble maintaining those people because their margins are all skewed, right? And so the government then says, oh, I'm bringing in a big. Well, let me let Lockheed handle the distribution of the supply. Let me have them buy the material. Okay, well then what do? They go and say, okay, I'm going to buy the material at a higher rate because they don't know how to negotiate, right? So they say, okay, I'm going to buy this from a foreign country. It's asinine. The Navy or the federal government or President Trump in this case should be negotiating that and saying, hey, this is what we're going to buy to steal from, or this is what we're going to get here to, this is how we're going to design the hull. Here's where we're going to get all the pieces of the supply chain. And the personnel should be the focus. So allowing more small businesses and forcing small businesses to be in to provide you the personnel and letting the Navy or DOD take control of the supply chain will change the entire gamut. But when you rely on a big to do the entire, these large businesses, what happens is you get fraud and waste. And I'm telling you, honestly, they'll buy something, for example, maybe for $5, right? And they'll charge the Navy $15. By the time the Navy gets it, right? The item is damaged or it's not working properly. A quick example I can give you: I had a contract over at Kings Bay, Georgia. I was a subcontractor on it, and but I was in charge of running it for the Prime, and the Prime is also a small business, and they basically were building a new. We were doing the QA oversight. They were building a brand new dry dock for the Columbia class submarine, and this is public information. So Columbia class submarine over at in Kings Bay, and so the dry dock. We were doing the oversight for the general contractor, and guess what? The general contractor, the last, I would say, maybe 1 month before the contract was done, was supposed to build these doors. There's doors for a dry dock. So they were supposed to put these doors on. And in the contract, it says Buy American. Well, guess what they did? And they're a big construction company. I don't want to mention their name, but very big. And what they did, they bought from China the doors, okay, and brought them in and expected the Navy not to see it because the Navy didn't. They just I'm paying millions. They charged the Navy for the U.S. one, but bought it from China because it was cheaper and was going to install it until our team caught it, saw it, and said, "Hey, these are from China." When the box came, and they were like, "Oh, sorry, the manufacturer must have messed up." Well, it's too late to cancel the contract, so what did they do? They paid them for that, and then paid them again to buy the American ones. Amazing. And so then they had to return they didn't return the China one, they just kept it or whatever they did with it. But it's just like, that's waste, right? And that's gaming the system when you're going for profits and you're not really looking for quality of support. And by the way, the fact is there shouldn't have even been a quality contract to do oversight for it if the contractor is doing their job properly. That's the fact. So the fact that they had to issue another contract to have someone do it is a problem.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, we got to take a commercial break. I want to keep talking about this, though, because finding the funding to do things like what we're talking about, expanding existing shipyard capability and incentivizing new shipyard manufacturers to be created and finding the capital for them is crucially important. But there's no appetite really in Congress to increase defense spending. So we're going to have to find the dollars. And we're talking with Naveen Anamolo. And we're talking about small contractors working in the defense industry, helping build ships, submarines, working in the fleet, and that relationship and how we can make it better so that we can do the things that President Trump's team says we need to do, which is get our Navy and our merchant marine fleets back on track with manufacturing and manned and operating so we can deter the big enemy, the big adversary, the real one, the Communist Party of China. We'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show.
I want to take a look at the Chinese military growth because it's staggering, according to the Defense Department. Just look at the numbers. They've got 50 new intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of striking the continental U.S. The cumulative total, by the way, is now 400. 600 plus operational nuclear warheads projected to surpass 1,000 by 2030. And the largest navy in the world with 370 ships and submarines expected to grow to 435 by 2030.
All those numbers, the other thing is the trend line is all going up, and not in some small fashion, in gradual fashion, but going up in a very large way. Another number to kind of draw attention to is the 300 additional medium-range ballistic missiles that are primarily used to go after U.S. Navy warships like the aircraft carrier, but also attack our homeland in Guam, where over 100,000 U.S. citizens and very strategically important bases are located. But for the U.S., for the last 20 years, the Navy has not been able to grow in any meaningful fashion. We're still below 300 ships. The last time we were above that was in 2003. So we have a long way to go. The Chinese are not slowing down, and they certainly are not going to be deterred until we actually strengthen our military.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday, and the truth is, you just heard it right there from Brent Sadler, I believe is who was speaking there, a naval strategy expert, and that is China is not going to be deterred unless we have the right size of the United States Navy and we have the right amount and right size of the U.S. merchant marine fleet that gives us the ability to protect our logistics lines of communication, to disperse our forces so they can't be attacked all at one time on one tiny island like the island of Guam with 2 or 3 installations on it. And those kind of things. And we're talking with Naveen Anamola today, president of SMC Inc. 1, who is involved in taking care of the fleet, the U.S. Navy fleet, submarine design with his company and his background as a small defense contractor. And Naveen, we were talking before the break about waste and saving money. And I want to continue that conversation. But first, let's take a question from our live audience. We've got a hand up over there. Go ahead, Rob. Patriot Rob is our host today.
We have Liz, Colonel.
Hi, Colonel. How are you today?
Good.
I just was wondering, I know that at one point Newport News, Virginia, was a big shipbuilding center. Could that be retrofitted and amped up for this purpose?
That's a great question, Naveen, since we're talking about expanding capability.
Yeah, it can be. Look, right now, all the contracts and all the work that they're doing is maintaining what we have. And while that's good, right, it's been degraded in its ability to be able to create new product. And I think that's the problem. When you want to build new ships, you need to really amp it up. You need to tell the suppliers to come close by. They'll build facilities right there. They'll rent. But all of those facilities have been. So Newport News has the ability to be one of the central hubs. And they were at one point. I mean, they were one of the number one, Newport News, Groton, Connecticut. These were the 2 places where everything on the East Coast happened. Okay, all the ships were built. They were ready to go. You had submarines also nearby there. You had Kings Bay for submarines as well. You had the West Coast. And these places were great. Now, in the new construction area, it's like a graveyard. And so everyone is just focused on what they call ship readiness assessments. Okay, is this ship good? Let's maintain what we have. It's kind of like your car is broken, but you keep sending it in. You don't get the new car because you're like, who wants to get the new car? My car's got 200,000 miles on it. It's okay. I can still use it. At some point, you got to change that. And President Trump made it a point to change that during his administration. And so he was able to get some new ships. So in San Diego and a few other areas, they started building new ships. What happened? As soon as he left, and look, this is going to sound political for those people looking at this, but I will just be honest and say this. It's almost like Joe Biden said, hey, stop doing that. We need to send the money to Ukraine. And it's like, okay, we need to help them build their ships and so that they can defend themselves, which in my opinion is an America last approach. But that's my view on that. So.
Well, that's why President Trump just won overwhelmingly in the Electoral College. He's certified now. He won the popular vote. No Republicans won the popular vote in many decades now. So, I mean, the American people voted and said the last administration's approach to most things, I think all things really, when you look at the big ticket items, was the wrong approach. And I think that's why that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on the show was to get some viewpoints out there, because I could probably get somebody from Raytheon or the bigs to come into the show and talk about that. And we have lots of footage about them and their folks that they rely on to tell their part of the story. But the part of the story that's got to be told is what you're talking about, You just talked about, getting the primes to be closer to the locations. That Newport News was once a huge shipbuilding location that could still be reactivated and maybe expanded in capability, but we have to have the right approach to do it, right? So you mentioned that DOD should take over security of the supply chain and operating that piece of this. What would it look like for the small contractors to wade into expanding our capability inside our shores? And at the same time, what does it look like in the near term? President Trump's talked about getting our allies to help us increase our capacity in the short term. What do those two things look like, Naveen?
Well, there is a slight danger in doing that, and I'm not challenging President Trump on it. But when you get our allies to help us, it's like you bring a foreign car in, right? If you don't, if they're building it to our spec, you're basically going to say, "Hey, I want you to build this to our spec." You're giving away critical information, critical designs on how our ships are done to a foreign entity. I understand they'll be locked down. Our people will be there watching them. But the fact is, there'll be people in those countries that understand. A lot of them are U.S. citizens, but they'll be over there with that knowledge on how to do it. Those foreign countries may also have their people there. So so I have hesitation for that. I understand why he's saying to do that, because right now we need to get these new, like I said, you need to get the new cars in quickly before you can start building your own, because it'll take you a long time to get up to speed. What we need is the primes, the large businesses, to come together and say, hey, you know what? We are all committed to this. Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, all of these companies need to come, and there's more, but they need to come together and say, you know what? We're going to unify together, and we're going to make sure that, you know what, we open facilities in Newport News. We're going to make it easier for the government to do it. Instead, what they they love the maintenance contracts, because the reason they love the maintenance is they can spend a ton of money. I don't want to curse, but they can spend a ton of money and charge them for maintaining. It's just like this. You go to the mechanic shop, right? I went to the mechanic shop today for my car, right? And they'll charge you a ton of money. But when you get something new, you really don't get to charge that maintenance until after a couple of 3-4 years, when it really starts getting wear and tear if it's built right. And so they're more focused on that. If they unify together and do it. Now, small businesses have to be heavily focused on getting the right people, not getting a person, getting the right people. And that requires training. So DOD should also be committed to say, look, we have a knowledge base. Let's work with our small businesses. Let's train the small businesses, their management, their executives. Let them understand this knowledge. Let's trust them the way we put all our trust in Lockheed's and others. Let's train them and say, here, how do you do this, so that we could train our staff and we can provide. Because if they did that, I could guarantee you today, I could get 600 new people ready to build ships today. If they came and said, hey, we're going to put a class together, Naveen, you come down, bring a couple of your corporate employees down here, I would be able to train the trainer and make sure those people are ready to go. That would be huge. And that is the investment that we all need to do. The government is even, and I don't mean to divert the topic, Colonel, but I will say this, the government is even talking about, hey, if we can bring in H-1Bs and others in here, train them on AI and all this stuff, and then give them citizenship, we can have them work for us. And that's sad, because nobody is thinking to say, hey, let's start training our people, making sure they're capable. And then if we have to, in an absolute need someone who has an advanced thinking at a certain level, let's bring in a general from another country, convert him, flip him to our side and do it. That's warfare. But, we should do that kind of stuff, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Look, the H-1B issue is, and I think the president, from what I've heard him say, agrees with Musk about using those kind of programs, but they have to be fixed. I mean, they've been abused, and they're America last at this point. So maybe throw the whole thing out and start over. I don't know, but we have Americans that can be trained to do this stuff, and we have capabilities like training welders and ship fitters and those kind of things. I live in Gulfport, Mississippi, and we have Ingalls Shipbuilding and a whole host of other smaller shipyards down here, and we have community colleges that do shipfitting classes. As a matter of fact, my son and I took one together just to see what it was like when he thought he was interested in learning to do shipfitting welding and those kind of things. So those could be expanded too, and we've got to do that. And let's talk a little bit more about that when we come back from this break, because we'll see on the opening clip what China's shipbuilding capability is for its Navy. And we're in just as bad a shape there as we are on the merchant marine side, folks. For every one of ours on the merchant marine side, they can build 340 ships in the People's Republic of China. We'll be right back with Naveen Adamolo talking about how do we get innovative and fix our ship manufacturing problem, both in the near term and the long term, so that we can eventually be in the right position to deter China and prevent a wider World War III. I'll be right back on Worldview Tube.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
In modern history, global power has been determined by naval power, and naval power has been determined by who has the most ships. You go back to 1943, we built over 18,000 naval vessels in 1 year. Do you know how many we built last year?
I'd guess it's in the tens.
8.
Wow, that's even less.
And we retired 12. We're -4 in a peacetime environment. Now you overlay that with what the Chinese have done over the last 30 years.
They're building hundreds or thousands a year.
They have 250 times our shipbuilding capacity, and they have 50% of the world's shipbuilding capacity. That means if you got the entire world teamed up against China, you're only at parity.
Wow.
That's scary, and that's a lot of power to be concentrated in any one country. And that's why we're building what we're building, and that's why we're building it so fast.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday, and you just heard some more truth there. You know, even if you combined all the world's shipbuilding capacity together, it still is just at parity with what China is capable of producing. And their Navy, as we've said already, is larger than the United States Navy already. Their quality is pretty darn good. You'll see another clip in the last segment that shows their newest aircraft carrier, and we are behind. And here's the problem with that. The problem with that isn't that we want to go fight a war with China. The problem with that is that we want to deter a war from happening, and we want to deter World War III from breaking out because we are not able to stand up to them and prevent them from taking away our freedom by their various hegemonic programs that they have put in place and that they're building to be able to fully implement all around the globe. And my guest today is the president of Supply Chain Management Inc. 1, and they're involved as a Navy and federal contractor in fleet support and submarine design. And we're discussing how we can increase our ship manufacturing, our workforce, and get back to the capability to build Navy ships and merchant marine ships so that we can actually deter China. And Naveen, you can't deter China unless you can control your logistics lines of communication in the Pacific Ocean. And we are not capable of doing that today.
Yeah, and you know, Colonel, one thing also very important. We have Guam. How many, shipbuilding in Guam and Pearl Harbor it's mind-boggling, but those should be the areas where the most shipbuilding is happening, the most submarine building is happening. All of that should be happening out there. It's not. We should be investing in 3D modeling. Okay, putting this stuff together. We should be investing in personnel as we discussed. Cost. Everyone's looking at cost optimization. Sure, costs may go up if it's built in the U.S., but you have more control if it's built in the U.S. I'd rather invest money on a ship made in the U.S. or made using United States steel, United States products, than stuff that comes from other nations and you're trying to put it together. These are all things that have to change. But when it comes to China, you want to combat China. The number one thing the DoD needs to do is build up their fleet in Pearl Harbor and build up their fleet in Guam. If you think about World War II, Japan was smart. I'm not, obviously condoning Japan, but they were smart. They looked at Pearl Harbor and they said, holy F, they have a huge fleet here. If we want to decimate the U.S., and the problem is the U.S. put all their effort and they built a huge fleet over there, but they weren't building as much. They were, but not as much as they could have over on the East Coast and other areas, or on the West Coast, better said. The East Coast they were building, but it became an issue where Japan said, hey, let's knock them out. If we knock them out, they thought we'll destroy their naval power. They were wrong, but they thought they would destroy us. But we're nowhere near that today. Today, if China's Navy came against our Navy, sure, we have better long-range missiles. We have other fighters. If you take our entire military, yeah, we would destroy them with planes and other stuff. But if it was just Navy versus Navy, I'm not sure how we would fare on it. And the other thing that's very interesting, Colonel, and I was just reading about it the other day. So many countries understand the process for how our ships are built. They understand the components of our ship. Isn't that a national security threat that they know, okay, the console is in the top corner here. Okay, the console has these buttons. Okay, the hull is why should they know do we know how Russia's ships are built? Probably not, because they're building their own, right? So why should we let other countries know the components of ours? Because we're being fickle on that. But man, we're spending like crazy for Zelensky suits. It's crazy,
Well, that's why it's so important to reshore our manufacturing. I'm not opposed to having shipyards in Guam, but I am opposed to not having enough facilities dispersed so Guam becomes a singular target that makes it easy. And I'm opposed to not having enough sea lift capability to be able to control those logistics lines of communication. And the manufacturing base that we had pre-World War II is what did that for us. It existed before World War II broke out. That's what the Japanese misjudged. They only looked at the military capability. They didn't really look deep enough into the U.S. capability itself. And it wasn't a defensive industrial complex manufacturing. It was the entire manufacturing capability. That's why this whole idea about getting our allies to help us has got to be short term. And in the long term, we have to reshore this manufacturing and reshore our materials production, right? There's a push to have, I think, Nippon to buy U.S. steel. And I think President Trump supported that in his last administration. But is that really the right thing to do versus, helping incentivize investors to reinvest in U.S. steel and get it going again so that it's producing the materials for our shipping?
Yeah, no, and you know what? I will say this. It's also kind of crazy because the Biden administration wanted to invest in electric-powered ships. Now, give me that again. They wanted to invest in electric-powered ships. They wanted solar ships. They wanted to be. I'm like, this is not where you invested that crap. Like, you want to do all that. I'm not calling it crap. You like that, fine. But you have to be we're going to cut the cost of gas. We're going to cut. No, don't cut. When it comes to defense, you don't cut. You got to spend. You got to be able to do it. And so, I agree with you, sir. We have to bring everything back onto our shores. We have to double down on that. And we have to double down on personnel. Again, if you trained everyone in Newport, actually at one point, Newport News, sir, and most of Virginia was considered like a naval or DOD state. It was like, if you were there, you worked for the government, you worked for DOD, you worked for the Navy. Now, if you go there, you see a bunch of surfers or other kind of people in the summers, and you're like, what the hell's going on here? Like, who are these people? And there's a shipyard, of course. There's people that work there. There's ships that come in. I mean, it's not like it's desolate, but there needs to be more work on readiness to fight rather than maintaining our current readiness. And it's very different. And I think that function will change. You were right about President Trump saying that in his first term about Nippon buying it, but I think he said he was going to veto it if it came to him, and he was going to be against it. Now because he wants American steel to be stronger, but he does want an investment into American steel from outside just to get the money coming in. It's very dangerous when you do that foreign investment, sir, because it depends on what you give them. And that's why I only trust Donald Trump to do it, because he knows, hey, as much as they try to screw him, he's screwing them back. So that's how that works.
Well, we've got to take a new approach that is like that. We've got hands over in the audience, Naveen. Let's go ahead and take a question real quick. Go ahead, Rob.
All right, Colonel, we have Wib. Go ahead, Wib.
Thanks, Rob. Thank you, Colonel. My question is almost twofold. The first one is, how much competition is there between the Navy and the Merchant Marine for keel space in the shipyards? And the second one is, and the second part of that is, how often is our gap assessment or readiness for fleet readiness, has it been done recently with the advent of drones and so forth and all that technology to kind of retool what we might need?
Great questions.
This is a very good question. So I think the Merchant Marine and the Navy, there's always going to be a conflict between them. The Navy tries to control where those ships are, the Merchant Marine ships. And I think Merchant Marine has a smaller latitude in terms of what they can do in their ships and the purpose of their ships. The Navy ships are more of the ready to fight ships. I think there's room for both of them, but I would like more investment into the Navy ships, to really the fighter ships, the DDGs, the submarines, those kinds of things, the Littor class and things like that. There's just got to be more investment into newer ships like that. As far as your second question about readiness, fleet readiness is done a lot. I mean, I have a contract where I'm constantly doing fleet readiness. But like I said, you're always making sure, is the car ready to go, right? And so the mechanic says, yeah, it's good. He keeps doing an inspection. And you're like, yes, my car got past the inspection. Okay, let me go out, but that doesn't mean that it's ready. Does that make sense? It means that, it passed whatever the threshold that they have is, but it doesn't mean it's not going to break down. And so we invest so much, like I said, we have regional maintenance centers all across the country that are maintaining these ships and making sure they're good. And ships come in, they dock, they get fixed up, and then they leave. So our fleet readiness, I would say, is pretty good based upon what we have. The problem is we're not bringing in a new flow of ships in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and are we to get another aspect of Wib's question about drones and defending against that capability, or using that capability as offensively from our current fleet, from a readiness perspective, are we ready for that? It's hard to tell from an unclassified perspective, but you work with refits and readiness assessments and those kind of things. Are we ready to do that kind of work if we're challenged at sea and in our land bases, or do we have more work to do?
So do you, let me preface the question. Are you saying utilizing drones to help fix the issues that we have? Or are you talking about utilizing drones to kind of assess the area and launching the drones from the ships?
Well, if our focus in ship manufacturing is maintaining what we currently have, are we able to look forward as new threats approach, like the drone threat that's come out? One of the things from the Ukraine-Russia war is the combat capability of using drones for your air and sea power, as opposed to using manned vehicles. It's a lot less expensive. You can get more of them. So if we're focused on just maintaining what we have, if you're looking at an Arleigh Burke destroyer and you're maintaining what it has, it wasn't designed to to defend against that or to use those types of capabilities offensively? Is there a program to look at that and assess that, and then put new capability to defend and offensively use those types of activities and capabilities?
Yeah, we have money invested into those capabilities. The problem with those systems is there's not an understanding on how those drones will operate efficiently when we deploy them. So an example, a lot of the generals and admirals and others who are there today, I'm not knocking them. I mean, these are all, there's not a trustworthiness that the drone will do the job you need. So we're more selling our drones, believe it or not, we're selling more of our drones than using them to our allies, because we're like, well, we don't know if this is going to work, but hey, Ukraine, you use it, or Pakistan, you use it, or whoever, you use it, and they may have success or failure. We're almost like testing it with them, how they use it. I think we have that capability to do it. What's interesting is there is a push also to utilize AI and drones to also fix the ships in seas, so that when you have issues, you don't have to bring it back to shore or bring it back to a base and try to have it fixed, and that takes a long time. So so what they're trying to do is, hey, let's get a robot or a drone and have them fix those issues, or at least assess the issues quickly. Again, right? That's great, but there's always going to be things missed. And so, I think if we rely too much on it, and I think the Biden administration has tried to do that, relied a lot on it, you've lost the human understanding of what's going on. And that's why I'm saying it's about getting right now, we should triple the personnel we have. I understand there's technology there. We should triple the personnel we have that has this knowledge and understanding. And then those people can make sure that these systems are implemented properly so that we can have the best technology moving forward.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So we've got to take our last break, Naveen. When we come back, we'll see a little clip again. And I'm harping on this, but can we fix our shipbuilding is the focus of this last segment. And where do we find the money? So I want to get your take on DOGE and what your hopes or your skepticism is about that program. We'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday, and we're putting a lot of truth down about the United States Navy and our merchant marine fleet and our ship manufacturing capability right now. We'll be right back.
All right, everybody, we're coming to the top of the hour.
On China's east coast, just off Shanghai, there's a shipyard so huge that it has more capacity than all the shipyards in America. It's called Jiangnan. It's a joint military and civilian site that's common in China, and it recently launched China's newest aircraft carrier. This is part of a problem so big for America that it could decide its future role in Asia. You see, Jiangnan is just one facility. Taken together, China has 230 times the shipbuilding capacity of the United States. You heard that right, 230 times. That was revealed in a leak from a US Navy presentation. China's Navy is already bigger than America's. With this huge difference in capacity, it could soon pull even further ahead. This could make it impossible for the United States to defend Taiwan, for instance, against a Chinese invasion, or to stand by the Philippines in the case of aggression by China in the South China Sea. That could lead to a collapse in American power and influence in Asia. This is now Donald Trump's problem, and experts say he'll need help.
Oh, it's a very, very serious problem, and the United States is going to have to also rely on Japanese and Korean allies to get allied shipbuilding up to anywhere close to where China is.
The argument goes that if the US can both beef up its own capacity and tie its allies closer together, it'll have a much greater chance of success.
Rebuilding the defense industrial base in the United States is going to be key. Number two is taking some of these mini-lateral alliances that we've built in the Asia Pacific and weaving that into something more like a collective alliance.
In his first term, Trump had a rough relationship with allies. He saw many of them as freeloaders. Now that he could use their help with China, the question is, are there deals to be done?
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday, and we are telling the truth about the capability of the United States Navy, our merchant marine fleet, and our inability to really be ready enough to be able to deter China at this point in our existence. And that's just the flat-out truth. Our guest is Naveen Anamalo, who runs a company that it's a federal contractor that does fleet service, submarine design, and those kind of things. And Naveen, that is the big question. You hear this in every clip that an American's speaking about. Well, we have to increase this. We have to increase that. We've got to build this infrastructure and get it going again, because we can't just rely on our allies. And you're right. That's a risky operation. It's got to only be in the short term. We've got to return these capabilities back to the United States. And I disagree with what the man in the clip said about the defense industrial base. We've got to increase our manufacturing capability inside the United States again to where we were at making things pre-World War II. That's what saved us in World War II, and that's what will deter countries like China, which is really the big adversary, and we need to get refocused on that. And I think President Trump, I know his team is going to, be turning to peace through strength and deterring China and away from all this endless war policy like we've seen with the Biden administration. So DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency with Musk and Vivek, and that idea has got to be put to use, don't you think, to help us do this job of increasing capacity in current shipyards, creating new shipyards inside the United States, whether it's Guam is inside the United States as far as I'm concerned, Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, maybe even use other territory that are on the Pacific Rim area up in Alaska to do it. But it all takes increases in money and funding. And as I said at the beginning of the show, there is no appetite in Congress or by the American people to increase defense spending. We're almost at $1 trillion a year now. So but we've got to find the money because we've got to do this. What are your thoughts on how we can do that?
Well, first of all, there's something called the Maritime Administration, which is MARAD. It's a federal ship financing program. Title 11 it's called. And look it up. It's MARAD. And basically this program allows the federal government to finance and help fund smaller shipyards. The smaller shipyards are important because they provide resources, like you said, manufacturing and all that. That has basically become, that's basically become obsolete in the last maybe 5 to 10 years. We need to reinvest money into that. With DOGE, I hope they're looking and saying, hey, where's this defense budget going? Why is this defense budget being sent to Ukraine, or better yet, there's another trick that's happening. The defense budget is going to give contracts to companies like Lockheed Martin or Raytheon or some of these other companies for them to do worldwide logistics. So, for example, before the October 6th, or I think it's October 7th, thing that happened with Israel, what happened, there was a big email that went out saying Raytheon has and Lockheed Martin, we're looking for subcontractors to support an potential incident in the Middle East. It's almost like they knew beforehand, and they already had over $100 million ready to go. Well, what did they use that money for? No one knows, right? What were they deploying? Because it's Israel's conflict, right? And so this kind of money that's being invested to this needs to be looked and needs to be broken down. How is this money being spent and repurposed? What first thing that they need to do is understand, what do we need to do to combat against China from a maritime perspective? How can we get more shipbuilding facilities here? If you look at that MARAD program that's here for shipbuilding grants and investments in small ships, that is huge. We should have all across the East Coast, we should have shipbuilding companies, facilities. There's no reason we can't. Okay, and all across the West Coast, we should have that. Hey, we can have it in Florida. We can have it everywhere. I mean, there's coast everywhere. And our Navy should be so strong that, we're not talking about attacking, but so strong that we can defend against anyone. And I believe we can today, but it's a combination of the entire military to do it. The whole point, and just a side note here, when I talk to a lot of friends of mine who are in the Marine Corps, who are in the Army, and I always ask them, I'm like, it's amazing. The Army has ships. The Navy has a ground force. The Air Force has a ground force. The Air Force is the only one without ships and stuff like that. And they're like, yeah, because the whole point is, any of these branches should be able to fight a war on their own to some capacity. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. Here's the question: can we really do that today with the United States Navy? And the answer is no. And so we need to double down and triple down on that. And we need to put more money in here. And so I hope DOGE does that. I really believe that it has the ability to do it. The question is, will the president and the Secretary of Navy and the Secretary of Defense listen to those requirements, cut in the places needed, get rid of the waste in these large contracts? And that will force Lockheed Martin and others to really lose a ton of money. They're expecting billions of dollars per year to come in contracts that come out to them. Doesn't mean they're making billion. They may give out subcontracts or whatever, but they're looking for that. And we have to regulate that.
Yeah, we've got to find the money. And that program, I think, you're exactly right. The money's there inside the current defense budget. If we just have the ability and the political willpower to use DOGE to find it and repurpose it. Let's take one more question before we get to the end of the show. Rob, go ahead. Make it quick, though.
All right, Warren, you heard the Colonel. Make it quick.
So I just want to make that quick. So I think, what's your best recommendation for Trump's second administration to just make the Navy industrial complex better than now? Because I think U.S.
Do you have
is
a
going
question for the Colonel, Warren?
What? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think I got it. What's your recommendation to the Trump administration to make the Navy's industrial complex better? And I would add more responsive and innovative, and if you can, less expensive.
Yeah, I mean, first you got to remove greed from the whole thing. You got to remove that whole big defense contractor model where they're hiring Nikki Haley's and they're hiring Mike Pence's and others to come in. You got to remove that piece of it. You got to have these people I would say people like you, sir, should be running these outfits and understanding that, hey, look, we have a strategic need to protect our nation. You need more patriots running these than you need individuals who want to make a crap ton of money. And that's really how you take back basically what he's saying is the people need to take back the military industrial complex. And we need to take that back. And the way we do that is remove the money and the greed in it. And sir, people like you should be running the military industrial complex. Really, you should be saying, hey, why are we giving $1 billion and the Lockheed guy is driving with the Maserati down the road, right? When, veterans are suffering, why is that happening? So,
I want to see more smaller companies get involved because there's better innovation, better pricing, which means better capability for America to defeat our enemies if we're called on to do it. That's what I want to see from the industrial complex. And I appreciate you coming on, Naveen. I've had your X account up the entire show, so folks know where to find you. Go check him out. Check out his company, SCM1 or I1. And it's a great little company. If you want to get involved and go to work, this guy can put you to work. Thanks a lot, Naveen. And Monday will be More War Monday. Retired U.S. Army Colonel Lori Burkhout is with us, former congressional candidate. We're talking cyber war because China is conducting cyber warfare against us. You know they are every single day, and we've got to improve our defense capability and look at what capabilities we can to go back and respond to that in an effective way without going kinetic. I'm Rob Maness, and I'll see you then on Worldview Tube.